5 to 9.
You're welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. So it's past 12 o'clock, but we will wait for another 2 to 3 minutes while we wait for the rest of us to join in. Thank you for keeping to time, and thank you for your patience.
Fuck you first.
So welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining us from. Happy International Women's Day to every one of you. My name is Zainab Yunusa and I am a gender equality advocate, a Europort Global Ambassador and an international development practitioner. And I will be your host for today. So thank you once again for joining. Now, you're welcome to today's conversation and sorry, I just realized that I have been on mute. For that reason, I will start again. So I was saying, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are joining from. My name is Zainab Yunusa and I will be your host for today. So I'm a gender equality advocate. I am a Europort Global Ambassador, and I'm also an international development practitioner. So today's conversation it will be an interesting one, and it will showcase women that are choosing to challenge the norm and to cause change in their respective line. And this conversation is brought to you by Jobberman in collaboration with You Report Nigeria, Generation Unlimited Nigeria, and Her Network. Now, in case you don't know, Jobberman is the #1 online recruitment platform in Nigeria, and the Jobberman's youth engagement team focuses on providing free soft skills training to young people, particularly in the ages of 18 to 35, and it could be through digital channels or offline events. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our guest speakers. We have 3 guest speakers, and they're going to introduce themselves in about 2 to 3 statements. So I will pass it over to Farida. Farida, if you could begin by introducing yourself. Over to you, Farida. Farida, you have to unmute yourself.
All right, thank you, Zainab. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Happy International Women's Day to all the women and all the he for she's that are helping us push boundaries in these times. As Zainab said, my name is Farida Yahaya, and I am the founder of Lumo Naturals. Lumo Naturals is a natural hair care solutions brand based in Abuja, Nigeria. I am also the lead tutor at the Brief Academy, and the Brief Academy is a concierge learning hub for purpose-driven founders who want to achieve wealth and scalability in their businesses. I'm also an author and a program coach at the Future Females Business School. I'm very excited to be here today talking about, women and how we can help advance this cause. I feel like it's a lifelong journey, and we can only do our path and pass the baton to more women as they come along. Thank you so much for having me, Jabberman. Over to you, Zainab.
Thank you, Farida. Now, Adewumi Alubi, please proceed. So while we wait for Adewumi, Mariam Bukar Hassan, if you could just unmute yourself and proceed.
Okay, hi everyone, good afternoon. Sorry, I was signaling that I can't unmute myself without the host doing that. Good morning, my name is Mariam Bukar Hassan. I am a poet, a performance artist.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mariam, but the sound is quite low. If you could
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but it's a bit distant.
Still distant?
Yes.
Okay. Just can someone else introduce themselves while I switch it up?
Okay, then I think Dewumi is here. So Miriam, while you try to adjust your audio, Dewumi, please, you may proceed with introducing yourself.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. Brilliant. I kept getting a pop-up that said the host is not allowing participants to mute. So I was like, Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Very warm greetings from Lagos. My name is Deomi, and I am, as I've said, I am an international development practitioner. My area of focus has been youth livelihoods, youth empowerment. And for the past few years, I have been working exclusively in youth livelihoods and youth empowerment. And it's interesting that in those years, I've come to understand that there actually is no real youth empowerment, youth livelihood if we're not talking about gender equality within any sort of intervention or any sort of work we're doing. So it is a pleasure to be here to kind of bring my lens or my scope or my angle to the conversation around, with this Women's Day and why it's important and why that kind of serves as the basis for the empowerment of the youth in general. Thank you very much, and I look forward to an exciting discussion.
Thank you, Dewumi. So Mariam, over to you. Could we try again with the introduction?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariam Bukar Hassan. I am a poet, a spoken word performance artist, and I make tea. I'm happy and excited. Excited to be here. And I look forward to contributing to the conversation. And happy International Women's Day to everyone.
Thank you very much for that. So I think some of our audience have got to meet our speakers now, and we're excited for today's conversation. So as you might have observed from the introduction, one of our speakers is a renowned poet and an exponent of spoken word. So I will then, it's a pleasure to invite Mariam Bukar to deliver her spoken word rendition for today's International Women's Day. So over to you, Mariam.
Thank you. So this piece is just flattering to the women and also an acknowledgement of the great things that women do and the future that we want. So it's titled The Future We Want, and here goes. It hurts to be a woman, but I see a future of marvel, of grace, sifting through the mesh of equality with inclusion in measured grains. You know, it only hurts to be a woman when you glorify the system and she becomes a bird who never sings, sounds like a broken record every time she attempts, resting at the edge of a society that will marry you off to silence like a secret you dare not spill, nor breathe too hard. Your breath is too convenient an escape. The idea of liberation, grapevine to a tree, shrinking in on yourself till you become strangers with the idea of growth. But I see a future. Woman, breathe. There is no tap dancing in space, there is no kingdom there. And the system is not your moon. So swallow your heart with a smile. Make a buffet of your mind. Take each bite with courage. Smell your roses, perfumed by the conviction to wait on no one to create the future you want. Love yourself, wholly first, and again, because woman, there is no pouring from an empty jar. The future will unfold in stardust, packed with generations inspired by your shine, an explosion of stars resting in the space of your legacy. Oh, you will venerate God's magnificence, in which is you not just bearing a name, but becoming a name, owning its blaze, trailing your potential. It will be a sizzling sound of victory, the echoing song of success. Oh, the world singing your chorus, blaring. When the future arrives, you will know it. It will sound like chains dropping off a slave. It will look like today's cloud. It will feel like euphoria. It will smell like fresh rain, earthy. It will remind you just how much you belong and how you won't inherit your mother's pain, because this is the future we want, and the future is now. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you very much, Mariam. That is absolutely beautiful. I wish we were in person, and I'm sure a round of applause will follow with this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for that. So not to waste much time, we'll just move straight to the discussion, the conversation of today. And let me state that while in the middle of this conversation, I'll be sharing 3 interesting facts today. And I hope that our audience will find them insightful, because our conversation will be around those facts. So I will start with Farida. Farida, but before I ask my main question, I want to discuss, there was one of your recent social media posts, and then you were praising the appointment of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the new Director General of the World Trade Organization. And there was a part of your post that struck me, and it says, and I quote, it says, "Our joy wasn't just that she was there as a figurehead. It was stemming from the fact that we knew she is capable." Now, this leaves me wondering that, seeing as there is scarcity of women in topmost leadership positions today, which do you think we should prioritize? Do you think we should prioritize strong representation or abundant representation? If you could just share your opinion before we move to your question.
All right, Zainab, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And it's such an interesting question, right? And I feel like I'm really happy that you caught that part. And one of the reasons why I mentioned that is because this conversation has happened with me with different women, in pockets here and there, right? In the last year or 2 years, where they say, let's just put a woman there, let's just put a woman there. And for me, my perspective is we shouldn't just put a woman as a figurehead. We should put a woman that understands the dynamics and the politics around having to raise the right, group of women, right? Because the reality is that already there is so much backlash, right? Every time a woman comes into the room, or every time a woman tries to go into the boardroom, the conversation is around, is she even capable enough? And Dr. Okonjo-Iweala's son actually put it really well when he said that already a lot of the times Black women have to do double the work just to get half the glory, right? By saying that most of the time you're working so hard just to prove that you actually even deserve the job, right? So for me, that is why I made that comparison, that it's not just because she's a woman that we're celebrating her. It's not just because she's the first Black woman or the first African to actually hold that position. It is also because she's a woman, and we know that she's capable because we've seen her in the World Bank. We've seen all her work in the finance ministry here in Nigeria. We've seen how capable she is and how grounded she is with the reality of trade and the reality of how it affects really moving the economy forward, right? So for me, that was why I made that assertion, that my perspective is not just because she's a woman, it is also because she's a woman that is capable and more than deserving of that, that particular role.
Thank you for that interesting opinion that you have shared. So now I'll move to the question that I actually have for you. So like I mentioned earlier, I'll be sharing 3 facts. So this is one of the facts I'll be sharing. Meanwhile, to our audience, if you have any comment or question, feel free to drop it in the chat. When it comes to the question and answer, we're going to try to pick as many as we can to our guest speakers. So now, interesting fact 1. There is a BBC report that states that 40% of Nigerian women are entrepreneurs. Now, interestingly, it is the highest ratio of female business owners in the entire world. So this depicts Nigerian women as driven, innovative, and passionate. Now, my question to you, Farida, is that considering your work of supporting female-owned startups, you're trying to help them achieve wealth and scalability, what is the most common gendered obstacles that you have faced or that you have observed among the girls and women that you coach? And also, what solutions have you preferred to this? If you could help me answer that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that question, Zainab. And I like the interesting fact that you shared, just as a preamble to this. Because when you look at that interesting fact, what you're thinking is on the ground, things are easier, right? Or it means that you have a level of resilience whereby even though there's so many obstacles, the women are able to push against it. Sadly, that is not the case. One key thing that I would like to highlight today, because we're celebrating, of course, International Women's Day as well, is I find the absence of community, which is quite sad because, when you think about the African society, you look at it as, a place where every child is, they say it's a community's child, right? Or every business belongs to everybody, belongs to the community. But unfortunately, with starting the Brief Academy and also with other coaching programs that I'm a part of, I've noticed that a lot of women lack community support. Now, I'll give you a classical example. 2 weeks ago, when I was having the coaching program with my cohort, the present cohort for the future females, right? We have about 25 women in that group. And the conversation came around, a lot of women were feeling down because they were stressed mentally, right? There's so much mental pressure to know it all because you're the boss. There's so much mental pressure to be able to balance all aspects of your life because apart from being a founder, you're also a mother, you're also a wife, you're also a sister, you're an in-law, right? So there's so much mental pressure on these women, even on the inside, even in the back, behind the scenes that is happening. And so the conversation is usually get a good support system. But then my question usually is, how do you know whether your support system is not helping or you're not able to communicate what you need, right? Comes back to the question of, will we be celebrating Dr. Iweala today if her parents did not actually give her a voice, right? If she did not have a husband that understood the need for her to do, and pursue her dreams. So the absence of community for me has been a major, major obstacle. And this is affecting a lot of founders, mentally, right? You find a lot of founders are depressed, a lot of them have anxiety issues, a lot of them seem to not be sure of their capabilities. So you have problems with confidence, you have problems with self-worth, you have people tying their self-worth to how much their business is making, right? One of the people in the cohort actually broke down, like I said 2 weeks ago. She actually broke into tears and she was like, my business is not doing so well. What is wrong with me? I'm supposed to be more brilliant than this and stuff like that, right? So the absence of community affecting the mental health of founders is what I've found to be really, really, worrisome for me. And that really ties also to the conversation around financial literacy and also having access to money. I mean, this year, one of the things I'm really happy to see is First Check. I think it's started by the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Piggy Bank, actually started another organization called, First Check, which is helping women to actually get their first check and really just get them out the door. Why? Because you find that when it comes to women, you find the grants are there, they're available, but then nobody's getting them, or it's not actually circulating as it should, right? So you find a lot of banks telling you, oh, we have women banking now, or we have access grants for, small businesses. But then what you're required to do before you actually have access to that money, or even get the money that you need, is actually such a Herculean task. So again, it comes back to community. For me, it is really the problem of having the right community to support you to move forward. Coming to the second part of your question, which is what have we done at the Brief Academy to ensure that we push this conversation. Apart from our monthly webinars, what I've done actively this year, right from the beginning of the year, is to actually create pockets where we have conversations almost on a daily basis. So I'm asking questions. I'm not doing the usual activities of how much did you make or how do we push your sales. Instead, I'm asking questions like, what are you grateful for? What have you done so far? Have you taken a break? So I have people coming to really talk to me about the real things that are stopping them from doing the work that they need to do. That is one thing that we have done, this year to change that conversation. Another thing I've tried to do even more actively also is have conversations with people that have access to funding for women. And I keep saying, why are we not giving these women the money? What is the problem? How do we bridge the gap? Okay. So starting these conversations for me has really enabled me to see that a lot of women have access to money, but they don't also know how to, really make sure that the money is able to trickle down and actually affect their cash flow. So those are the two things that I know I've actively done this year, and also being part of conversations. I started an investment club this year, getting people to save their money with PiggyVest. And I'm really happy to see that, as at the last time I counted, we had over 10 women, being a part of this challenge. So it's just a challenge to get people to talk more about money and understand that these are conversations we need to have if we want to move our businesses forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Farida. That has been insightful. So I'll quickly, just to be on track with our timing, I'll quickly then move on to my second interesting fact. I can see a hand raised up. Don't worry, you can note down your question. When we get to the question and answer, you're going to have an opportunity to ask Farida what you intend to. Now, moving to my second interesting fact of the day. So there is a McKinsey report that was released in 2015. And then it actually stated that Nigeria's GDP could grow by $229 billion by 2025 if women participated in the economy to the same extent as men. This is amazing, 23% increase if only women are as active as men, which leads me to Dewumi now. Dewumi, I will try to unmute, yeah. So Dewumi, even with this astonishing prediction that McKinsey report has stated, the gender gap in Nigeria's economic growth is wide. And for the sake of our audience, by gender gap, I mean the difference in the level of economic attainments between men and women. So looking at this, Dewumi, and seeing as you're someone who is vast in partnership and finance, could you share how these gender gaps have presented themselves in your line of work? And are there ways to overcome them at all? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Zainab. And it's very interesting, the facts that you use to start each session, because it really, the questions, it helps kind of frame and focus the questions. But I want to bring it out beyond Nigeria, right? I want to bring it to all of Africa, because with the AFCTFA now, we're all truly interconnected. And even in the world, almost 1 billion women in the world don't have access to financial services. People, let's just even start with people. And that number isn't getting lower. In fact, it's been steady for the past 5 years, according to a report by Axion. And it's interesting that the more we are more aware around women's equality, gender parity, and women's participation in their own development, you would expect that number to start changing. That gap has remained the same. So when we're discussing how the gap presents itself in terms of development work, economic development, we always come from these things in terms of the problem. All we see is the problem. We always try to throw solutions. How do we eliminate this gender gap? How do we, and the simplest thing we can say is that the financial institutions, the fund makers, they're clearly not doing enough, right, to understand the financial needs of women. Unfortunately, it is not their fault. When women are working, there's a lot of work being done by women. Yes, honestly, we're more productive. That is not structured, rewardable work in the typical sense. They can't go to the bank when they're preparing for an application and say something like, oh, I'm ready to apply. And they say, okay, what experience have you had? They can't list managing a home in terms of managerial experience that gives the bank confidence in their ability to manage these funds. When they get there, they're asking them, okay, you need collateral or proof of address or something like that. The house they live in is in their husband's name or their father's name. They don't have proof of residency because of that. So while these opportunities are there, the funds are there, and I always want to say, creating gender sensitive funds, it is not moving in the same pace as a lot of policies. So I always want to have that conversation where we separate what is being done and how it's presenting itself. The organization I work for, we create opportunities at what we call the last mile, which with very little collateral, very little requirements, women can access funds to test an idea or start their business. The challenge now is how do we get the women out of the kitchen, out of women's work, to be able to productively, in terms of something we can measure in GDP, contribute to society. Until we are able to measure the housekeeping work, the children rearing work, and all those things, we will still keep thinking women are not as productive. But I choose today to challenge that notion. Women are in fact more productive. We just need to work, especially from the finance side, we need to work to find more creative ways to be able to fund women entrepreneurs. And let's also remember, women entrepreneurs are not all the same. So the products that we come up with have to fit the different shapes, sizes, and backgrounds that these women present from. In this new age, it is interesting that we're offering low interest loans. But if you're from a religion that doesn't believe in loans, you are left out of this opportunity that's been presented, because there's some places where you can't. Loans, I think, is haram and sometimes, like, so for us, the creativity that we have to put into designing opportunities that will close these gaps, it comes from conversations. It comes from the conversations we're having. And if we keep engaging in these sort of conversations, we might be able to find that magic key, But as of now, there's so many solutions, but we're somehow not connecting private sector solution to policy solution to even home cultural solutions to women's empowerment in order to be able to do the financing that is ready and that will back them for long-term support and long-term growth. So I just need us to continue having these conversations, honestly, because the more you talk about it, the more you definitely identify that it is not a one-shot, this is fixed situation. It cannot be, because the issues are so multi-layered. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewumi. I think that's an interesting perspective to an angle to bring the solutions from. The solutions you always say that they are there, but how are they being used? How are they being utilized to solve the problem? So thank you for that. Now, moving on, I can see some hands raised. Thank you for your interest in that. Like I said, once we're done with the speakers, we have the round for question and answer. So please feel free, note that your questions will be attended to. So now, moving on to my third interesting fact for the day. Unfortunately, it's the last one, but then we'll move on. So some people may not know, but today is the International Women's Day, and there are 3 colors to actually signify today. So there is the purple, there's the green, and there's the white color. Purple signifies justice and dignity. Green symbolizes hope, and white represents purity. So these are the colors of International Women's Day. And now I will move to Mariam. Let me try to unmute you. Okay. So Mariam, first of all, I am fascinated by your creative works, and particularly your spoken words. They are amazing. And from what I have observed, you're welcome, it is my presumption that these words that you put out there, they're meant to uplift, to encourage, and to motivate minds. So it is sort of in alignment with the green symbol color of the International Women's Day. That's the one that represents hope. So it comes from within you. Now, I'm curious to know, how does it contribute to women's empowerment in terms of power and change? I feel you're in the best position to answer this, because this is something you've been involved in for quite a while. So how do you see this contributing to women's empowerment in terms of power and change? That's part 1 of the question. So I'll let you answer that before I throw the next one. Over to you, Mariam.
Okay. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm humbled. Thank you. In regards to your question on how poetry contributes or brings out that power and change, I would say that when you talk about power, first of all, words in itself, when needed very well, has a massive effect on either boosting confidence or bringing it down, depending on how you use it. And I would say that poetry is about truth telling, and you can also use it to build that confidence, in my case, in women, in youths, in children. And when someone has that confidence, the person can take on the world. If a woman has confidence and can find her voice to speak and to believe in herself, she can take on the world. And I saw an interesting quote today by the vice president, where he said that nations are not built by politicians or their opinions, but by men and women in business, the professions and commerce. So once we acknowledge that women have that power, and it could just be that one day you just come across a poem that just pushes you to take that one step to see that change. And once you take it, you'd be able to see that change. And also, another way that poetry helps is that it helps you in owning your narrative. You can own the narrative. And once you can own the narrative, then you can control that power to a certain extent. And for me, that's what I live for.
Great. Building confidence for women to find her voice and to speak, and that way they can change, they can take on the world. That is amazing. And so my second question to you is that, what do you now say? I mean, considering your line of work, considering that you are a woman as well, what do you say to people who underestimate you or women in your line of work? You could share an experience with us.
This might be a bit harsh, but I would say that I normally say that I don't think they know what they're talking about, and I don't think they pay attention to what's happening in the world, because when you have a voice, then you can have a seat on the table.
Thank you. That is a nice way to go about it. So thank you to our speakers. I will then try to go through the chat to see some of the questions. Please also feel free to raise your hand. So I can see there are two questions here from Bushra. So Bushra, what I will do now is to try to unmute you so that you can read out your questions and direct it to any of our speakers. Please make it very brief and straight to the point. So Bushra, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon, Zainab. Wonderful moderation so far. Can you all hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. And to the speakers, thank you so much for your contribution. Miriam, thank you as always. It's really wonderful hearing from you again. Your words are really, really touching and they're so lifting. Thank you for all you do. So quickly to Farida, I actually had to make a comment when she was talking about what she does with her work and how they try to teach these women about their business and all. So I was thinking about how we could also have some sort of peer-to-peer support, because of course they can't do all the work. So these women get to learn these things. They go back to the community, they cascade down the knowledge they've acquired. And in that way, we're also trying to expand the reach of that knowledge, and also reduces the work on the key actors that does these interventions. And also that depicts the fact that women don't support women for competitive, even though the competition is necessarily not bad. Competition is good for growth, just that it's really not good when it's negative. Then also to Farida, you mentioned about quota system earlier. As much as I really don't believe in the quota system of just having women fill up spaces, of course, we need to have competent women. But as of today, you still realize in Nigeria that we still have low representation of women in position of authority and power. Does that now mean we still do not have competent women to fill in these gaps, or what are the problems? And what are the solutions you think you can proffer to this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bushra. Before Farida answers that, I don't know if any other person have a question. So while she's answering that, please, the same thing, feel free to either drop it in the chat, or you can use the raise hand button, so that once Farida is done with that, if your question is to any other person, then I can unmute you so that you speak. So now over to you, Farida. Maybe you have something to say to Bushra's question.
Thank you so much, Zainab. I love the closing line for Mariam's conversation, and also what everyone was able to say. Thank you, Richard, for your question. So now I'm at a loss for which one to answer first. So let me first start from the top, which is my perception about putting qualified women, right, in positions. I did follow up that immediately with the quote by her own son, who said that women, especially Black women, have actually been forced to do double the work just to get half the glory. So I agree with your sentiment, right, of saying that, yes, we should have more women because there's low representation. My perception, however, is when I go into a room, and it now ties back into what you were saying about women supporting women. When I go into a room, obviously, the first thing is I am naturally inclined to root for you as a woman when I see you speaking in a space, right? However, I would feel really terrible if you are not doing the right thing or saying the right thing, right? And I would feel like you've taken up space, and then now the conversation now turns to a woman who is not doing the job, as opposed to a woman who is doing the job well and actually able to lift others. So that's my sentiment for that. Like I said, it goes hand in hand, right? Now, to your second question about peer-to-peer mentoring, of course, I am one who is always talking about this. I mean, even the last chapter of my book, Redefining Beautiful, I talk about side by side. For me, mentorship is actually about side by side. I have mentors that call me and ask me, for advice, and I ask them for advice as well, because nobody has it all figured out, right? At every point in your life, you might be ahead, 10 years ahead in one aspect of your life, but in another aspect, you might need someone else who is much younger, or even much wiser than you are, to actually share their own opinion and perspective. And that really helps you to grow. So I agree that there's a need for peer-to-peer mentoring as we grow, just to pay it forward, right? However, I would like to point out that really, for the longest time, women have been made to believe that they have to compete with each other to be able to grow, right? So in this case, the competition is not actually healthy. Yes, it is good for growth, but it's a very unhealthy competition that has actually been really put into our mindset and our mentality for years. So it's not something that is easy to reverse, right? It's a limiting belief that you grow up with. Even as a little girl, you grow up with the fact that you have to take down so many other women to be able to get the man of your dreams. You have to take down so many other women to be a strong woman. You have to be able to fight all the demons that are coming into your home and all of that, and trying to take your son and your husband and this and that. You're always fighting constantly against things that would naturally actually help you. So it's an unhealthy competition. So it doesn't really help for growth. So my conversation around that is we really need to teach women how to have conversations and how to grow beyond the unhealthy competition and actually have healthy competition. So how do we get women to start talking about, I love what this person is doing. I'm not jealous, but I wish I could do just as much, or I could push myself to do even more. So be inspired by that. But the honest reality is that at this point in time, we are not there yet. So it's something we have to teach. It's something we also have to consciously unlearn. So I hope that sort of answers your your question, or gives you perspective as to my own views on this.
I think it did, Farida. Thank you very much for that. So I can see Rukayat Raji's hand up. So I'm going to unmute you now. Rukayat, please make your question very straight, or your comment or contribution. Over to you. Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the section. Really amazing. I just want to make a humble request. I don't know if
Sorry to interrupt you, Rukayat. We cannot hear you clearly. Maybe you can try to speak up.
Is it better now?
Yes, it is much better.
So I said I want to make a request. I don't know if it is allowed to seek for mentorship from one of the speakers. That's they will be. I've been trying to reach out for some while, but unfortunately I couldn't. So I'm thinking of using this platform to make an appeal to her. I don't know if it can be granted.
Okay. Thank you for that, Rukayat. So I think that's something that Dewumi could answer you in private, I think. So please just try to reach out to her via her social media page and see what response that you get. Or you could even message her now. So I hope something fruitful comes out from that. So moving on, are there more questions or comments from any of our audience members? Please feel free to share regarding, if you have any comments regarding what our guest speakers have said or something that you want to also contribute. So if there isn't at the moment, I think we will just proceed. If anything comes up, you can always drop it in the chat and I will be sure to read it out while the session is going on. So as you know, one of the themes for this year International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge, which is where the topic of our discussion is actually drawn from. Choose to challenge the norm. So I want to put our guest speakers on a hot seat right now. I want them to give us their choose to challenge statements. So something that you're thinking, something you're vying for, or something you're pushing, something that means a lot to you, and then you're trying to choose to challenge. You're trying to challenge people to push for. So I don't know who wants to start. The floor is open. I will just try to unmute 3 of them. So I'm trying to unmute Dewumi, Farida, and Mariam. So please just give us your choose to challenge statements.
I'd like to go first if that's fine.
Great, Dewumi, please do.
So with my hand up and everything, I choose to challenge the bias that women don't need additional support. The fact is, we know that if you empower women, you empower the whole generation. The children are more likely to go to school, the husband is more likely to be productive. So I definitely want to choose to challenge that bias that we do not need to do extra to level up our women.
Great. Over to you, Farida or Mariam. Okay, I can see Mariam's hand.
Okay, hi, so I choose to challenge silence. I disagree that women should not necessarily want more or push more, and also that, they don't belong right in the forefront of whatever type of work they choose to do, be it creative or any type of work. So I choose to challenge silence, and yeah, that's it.
Great. All right, over to you, Farida. Yeah, Farida, you're on mute, so you can speak. I think we might have lost Farida. Okay, I think she's back. So let me try to unmute you. Great.
Okay, my apologies, Zainab. I had calls coming in, so I had to quickly just.
Okay, then please go ahead.
Put it on hold. Okay, so I'm back now. Am I supposed to share my choose to challenge?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I choose to challenge the bias that women have to suffer before they get the good things of life. Just because women are resilient does not mean that we have to go through so much before we can get what we deserve. And being strong does not mean that you always know it all or you always have the solution. It's okay not to know it. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask questions. And it's okay to really just take the help when you get it.
Great. Thank you for those words. So I can see a hands up, Yetunde Bolaji, so I will unmute you. And please, those members of our audience, if you feel you have your choose to challenge statement that you want to share, I think we still have enough time. I could take a couple more. So just raise your hand or put it in the chat so I unmute you. So I see Yetunde Bolaji. I will unmute you now for your question, comments, or contribution.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. Okay, so I would take it as a question and as a challenge. I choose to challenge we not being recognized in some sectors in Nigeria. Take, for instance, in engineering firm. they preferred other gender, the male gender to the female gender. And in some top positions as well, they still prefer some male genders compared to our own gender. So I really do not know why that is in that in that way. But is that something we could do to curb that? Or how can we prove ourselves in that aspect? So I choose to challenge placing the other gender above us when we are competent enough to handle that position. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Yetunde. So yes, it came in form of a question and also a challenge statement. So Chinonso, I can see your hand up, so I am going to unmute you now. Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Women's Day to all of us. And I'm here to also challenge the bias that we women can't be pretty and still be, like, should I say, level-headed in whatever profession we choose to be in. Like, we can be pretty, we can be beautiful and still have things upstairs. It does, like, that, like, should I say, what people think that, oh, because this girl is pretty, maybe she doesn't know anything, just her beauty that is making it work for her. That's not true. We have beautiful people in so many sectors of the world, so many professions who are killing it every day, who are smashing their goals. We have David Naji, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and a whole lot of them. So I choose to challenge the bias that women can be pretty and still be smart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chinonso. That's a very valid point, and I also concur with your statement. So before we're now getting to the closing session, and before we wrap everything up, I don't know if our guest speakers have one final thing to. Uhanan, is that you raising your hand? Okay, then let me just try to unmute you so that you share. Okay, please go ahead. Quickly, you can unmute, you can speak now. Let me try. Okay, so you can unmute yourself now.
I choose to challenge the saying that women to say.
Unfortunately, we can't hear you clearly. Could you repeat it?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I choose to challenge a women. I said women has little or no say at all on important issues of society.
Great. You choose to challenge that women have little or no say in on important issues in their life. That's very valid too. Thank you for that. I can see Usman. So Usman, you'll be the last person I'm taking. So please go ahead. Usman, please go ahead and. Usman, we can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Okay, then maybe I should take Mohammed. Usman seemed to be struggling with his audio. Okay, Usman, now you can speak. Okay, I think we're still struggling to hear you. So I'll just take Mohammed and then we proceed. Mohammed, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, I think we're struggling with the mute and unmute options. So I will just proceed. So, okay, I was trying to go through the chat to see. So thank you everyone for joining. I have one last request before we call it a day. If you could just turn on your camera for us, and you can take the choose to challenge pose. That means you put a hand out so that we just take a picture of all of us. So if you could just turn on your video, everyone, for 2 to 3 seconds, yes, and let's just do the pose together so that we can take screenshots of this. So I'm seeing a few people still are yet to do it. So while we wait for that. All right. I'm seeing more faces. Can I see more hands? Great. Thank you for showing solidarity. Great. So I hope those are taking the screenshots are taking it. Thank you everyone. Thank you for the support, for the solidarity, choosing to challenge the norm. Okay, so I think we got that. Thank you to everyone. So before I call it a wrap, I think I would also like to share my choose to challenge statement. I choose to challenge a lot of things, but for now, I think I will just prioritize the marginalization. I choose to challenge the marginalization of women in public decision-making spheres. That is very close and important to my heart. So because I believe that if we have more women in decision-making positions, it will indirectly and directly solve a lot of our issues that we have. So I choose to challenge that. And I challenge more women to come out to vie for political positions, to get the proper training, the proper funds, the proper assistance that they need to do this. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Don't let anybody tell us that a woman's place is a second-class citizen or is a deputy or a vice, that a woman shouldn't go for that position. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you to Jobberman for putting this together. Thank you to You Report Nigeria. Thank you to Generation Unlimited Nigeria and also Her Network Nigeria. So if you want any information about Jobberman, you can always sign up on jobberman.com /customer/sign up. So there are also some interesting opportunities at Jobberman. You can check them out. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a beautiful International Women's Day celebration. Thank you to our guest speakers and thank you to our participants. So